Kirkland has an interesting history when it comes to its relations with the Black community. There were areas in Kirkland that started as white only by covenant, which were made illegal by the state of Washington, but they still kind of clinged to that. Juanita Firs is one neighborhood that comes to mind. You have the high school with the Juanita Rebels, which originally was supposed to be, well, we're rebelling against conventional education, but then in the 80s, they changed the mascot where it didn't have the Confederate flag, but you didn't have to squint really hard to go, that's kind of a Confederate flag. And all of these old wounds got opened up when George Floyd died. Tell me about your work and your interactions with the city government in Kirkland, and at a city level, how Kirkland is kind of looking to their past so they can do better in the future.
I think that Kirkland, out of every city on the east side, is the most progressive when it comes to the work. Even though their progression isn't a lot, they're the ones who did do a resolution 5434, which in states they do believe that Black Lives Matter and trying to help BIPOC communities in other ways, but they're still working on the kinks and things. But they're one of the only cities that I know of that are actually doing things like that. The council member are working together as one, trying to amplify Black voices and try to support all their communities. And I wish I could say that for all of the East Side, but I just don't see it. I've talked to leaders from the East Side Change Coalition, and they're now just having conversations with Bellevue and Bothell and things like that, when they should have done this months ago. There have been protests for months, and I'm always just trying to egg them on, because it's something that isn't just a Kirkland thing, it's an East Side thing, it's a Washington thing. So that's why I'm just pushing forward on now too.
As you know, Bellevue has had a complicated issue when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement. They had the incidents that happened on May 31st. And what has been identified by the police, by the county, is that the people that did the terrible things on that day were not involved in any way with Black Lives Matter protests. It was gang activity and looters that came in. However, there have been other protests in Bellevue, including one in October, that kind of put the whole city in panic. So what would you say to that community that goes, yes, but they're just protesters and rioters and they're breaking stuff and you're part of the problem? What would you say to that community?
When that protest happened in October, I wasn't there personally, but I saw all the comments, all the rampage that all these suburban people were talking about just, they're here to rob us, they're here to do all these things, we need more police, what are they doing? And it was not surprising. The organizers who did that, obviously, yes, rattled their cages just because they're proving a point. They're trying to show that the community needs to take care of the community instead of just, paying attention to merchandise. But nothing even happened that day. And when we talk about the previous protest and all the rioting, and we say that, yes, Black Lives Matter wasn't the ones who were responsible, but how the news basically said it was, and how they still perpetrate the people doing these protests as the bad guy, I just get upset, because these protests are here for a reason. They're here to say, hey, Black Lives Matter, what is this multi-billion-dollar, city doing to support? They're doing nothing except locking their doors, trying to get more police, and doing nothing for the homeless community, not helping their BIPOC, kicking people out. And I get so emotional when I talk about this, but it's something that needs to be done. You can see how much of a waste it was, the last protest in October, how much of a waste it was for resources, for police, just in how it made everyone scared, when no one needed to be in fear, because it was a peaceful protest.
If somebody's watching this right now and they're an ally and they're involved at a very passive level, right? They made their Instagram black for a day. Maybe they showed up in early June, right? And Mark did the 60,000 march with the white coats for Black Lives. And They put Black Lives Matter hashtags up for a little while, and they're like, okay, I really should be doing something more. Let's give them a homework assignment. What would be one thing that you would say is not performative, but is actually real action?
I think going out of your way to educate yourself. Going out of your way to educate yourself. Follow the local activists around you. Listen to the people who are doing this work. And if you have the money, donate to them. Donate and support them in any way you can. I know in this month of December, Black Action Coalition is doing a food drive and a toy run, and all these all these little tiny things that are tiny but make a big impact on BIPOC communities.
I know that when I started my personal journey, I immediately absorbed go and educate yourself, but full stop. The other part of that message was go educate yourself and don't ask a Black person to educate you for them. You need to figure it out yourself. And for a lot of people, that's a little bit hard because they don't know where to start. So if you were to give them a starting point, what would that starting point be?
I think when it comes to educating yourself, it's not just reading a book. It's not just saying, oh, I've done this. It's actually doing the work. It's actually stepping out of your comfort zone and telling people this is wrong. Telling your community to stand up, not just because you want to feel good, but to really be uncomfortable, get out of that comfort zone and do something that's right, knowing that this movement isn't just a day by day, it's an everyday support in every moment, trying to help and be that ally and comrade.
Nikayla, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us. I believe that we will see a lot more of you behind the scenes as we get into spring and summer of 2021. And is there anything special that you're doing during your self-care break?
What I'm doing for December is really just putting my phone down, focusing on my well-being, my mental health, figuring out what I want to do better, and figuring out how I can push myself to not just have all these organizations come together or these communities, but how we can better support each other on a personal level. And so I can't do any of that until I focus on me. And I'm excited for January when I come back, and hopefully I won't just be behind the scenes. So yeah.
Once again, thank you so much for your time. And I know we're looking forward to having you back in the game, so to speak, when we get into 2021.
Thank you so much for having me. And I definitely, hopefully, will see you soon out in the streets when COVID is not as strict, hopefully. So yeah, take care.
She truly is amazing. Nikayla has just done a ton of things, and she is taking a little bit of a break for the month of December. She ran a series of events on the east side called Sit Down and Listen that more people should participate in, where I know I sat down and listened, and I'm glad that I sat down and listened, and I have learned a lot. And I think we will be seeing a lot more of her in 2021, and I think we are seeing somebody who could become one of our future leaders. It really has been amazing to work with her. And yes, we have Yoda Vision 2000 under my arm. There's a couple